Casual discussions with the boys. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Casual Discussions with the boys. First discussion for 2021. Pretty keen. Sorry, this one's pretty late. We've been struggling to get a time where we all fit in. Actually, one of our members pulled out last minute. Big chance. Shout out. As we start off this year with this podcast, we're actually looking at. I think this movie is in most of our top 10s or top 5s even, so you can gauge where it's going to be at with our initial feels. Just a little heads up as we start this podcast, we've actually kind of tried to put a bit of structure into these and have little segments or segments. Shout out to Mark Sagawa. We'll probably try and copyright that. So
Surely we need to.
yeah. But yeah, anyways, we'll I guess I'll explain each one as we go, and I reckon we just jump right into it. So our first segment is called Out of the Cave. If you remember in Iron Man 1, he escapes from a cave. This one is just essentially our initial feels of the movie. Was this movie a box of scraps or something more than that? I guess we'll start in the order of where I say everyone and start off with David while he's got chips in his mouth.
How many episodes have we done? And just now we're introducing a structure. I mean, we want to have some order to these now.
To be honest, I don't even know if we'll be able to stick to the structure, but
yeah, probably not.
We have to go back and redo all of them now.
With the structure. Probably.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we already veered off from it. David, let's go.
Look, for me, basically, after Thor: The Dark World, I actually remember being like, I think I made a promise to myself I was not going to go and see the third one. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to waste my money. It can't be good. It's not going to work. And I was wrong, because actually, I would say this is my favorite movie of the whole MCU.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it start to finish, and I don't think I've had that great of a time in a movie or even in a cinema experience. Like, I know I'm really talking this up, but it was just fun. It was funny. It was fun. And it had the right beats to it. And like, even though someone could say that, you know, it's like borderline parody of Thor, I think it still is able to balance out the serious elements we have and still have humor and still have a message through the humor. And that's credit to the director. So yeah, initial thoughts, amazing movie.
Yeah, nice. All right, we'll go to Malika.
All right. I really enjoyed this Thor. It's funny. It has Hulk in it, which was like a pretty good surprise watching it for the first time. I don't think anyone really thought that, and I can't remember if I noticed like if it was in the trailer or not.
That instantly puts it up like 3 Tobey Maguires for you.
Yeah, pretty much. It just boosts the movie. Especially that he's Hulk in it for a while. But yeah, it was good. Like visually, it's awesome. Very colourful Marvel movie as well. The only couple of things I didn't like, one's mad controversial, but the other one is that they use the storyline of like Planet Hulk, World War Hulk, where I really like the original storyline for that. So that now that they've used it a bit, I don't know if they'll use it again, and that's sort of disappointing. And the second one, the controversial one, is that I was getting a bit bored of the Rock, I can't remember his name.
Gore. Incorrect.
Yeah. I was getting rid of his humor getting bored of it towards the end. It was a bit over the top.
Piss off, Ghost!
Okay.
Other than that, great movie.
So I guess for both you and David, it's more than a box of scraps. This movie so far. Okay. Okay. Order's kind of switched up a bit. Grantus.
I'm just going to start off by saying it's more than a box of scraps. Get that out of the way. But also, touching a bit on what Mark said, it would have been actually cool if they used The Rock's voice to play Korg, like The Rock playing a rock. Would have been pretty cool. But also, I was actually a little bit worried when the movie started. I was worried they were going to be like trying to be too funny, and like the whole movie was just going to be a comedy rather than anything. But as it went on, for me, obviously, it became my favorite film. I can't really put it with Infinity War and Endgame. They're on their own level, but it is my favorite Marvel film. Obviously, I'm a massive Thor fan, so Dark World didn't really deter me away from the excitement. But also, obviously, Hulk's a very good side character in this film. Good addition. But yeah, I think overall the humor's great. Obviously, you got the really good scenes, like obviously destroying of the hammer and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, Odin's death, which is pretty massive. And obviously, after you watch Thor's mother die in number 2, Thor's father die in number 3, then Thor's brother die in Infinity War. Like, just so much death. There's a lot of seriousness and emotion amongst all the humor, and I think that's what this movie got spot on. So, awesome.
Yeah, nice. Well, no big surprise there, especially being probably the highest Thor fan among us. Alvarez, out of the cave.
I want to say spoilers for Loki dying in Infinity War. For anybody that didn't know, it's ruined for you now. I love this movie. I actually looked at my list and I put it as number 1, and I'll say now it's not number 1 for me. Like, I don't know what I was doing when I was doing those ratings. It's definitely not number 1, but it's definitely like top 3, top 5. Like, I just think they did everything really well. And for me personally, in comparison to the first 2 Thor movies, like, I wasn't a massive fan, obviously of Thor 2, but even of Thor 1, like, it was kind of a not a throwaway movie, but it was sort of fell flat a little bit. So Thor 3 was a really, really nice surprise. And I thought they sort of brought it, and they managed to mix the comedy with the action, I think, pretty well. But also just like the character building and stuff, like, you know, all of a sudden we care about Valkyrie, and she could have just been a side throwaway character who they just used once and then never revisited again. But all of a sudden you want to see more of her towards the end of the movie. And it's like, oh, I really hope they develop her character and make something of her and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, more than a box of scraps for sure.
Yeah, nice. I guess for me, all right, so I don't know if anyone remembers from our previous episodes. In Guardians 2 and kind of Spider-Man, the Homecoming, I said I kind of fell off the Marvel train a little bit. And this was the actual movie that brought me back into Marvel. Back into the MCU. I was all for it, pretty hyped and ready to go for whatever they had next. So, yeah, I rank this movie 3rd in my rankings with, like Grant said, Infinity War and Endgame to the side, because I couldn't really, it was hard for me to place those movies in. But Thor Ragnarok, Thor Ragnarok, amazing movie. I loved it. So much more than a box of scraps. It's straight up Iron Man armor to the max, whatever. Really enjoyed it. So yeah, out of the cave, those are my initial feels. Pretty much similar to everyone. There are aspects, I guess we'll touch on in the other segments that it's more just kind of just me being picky, but we'll get to it in the 3rd segment, I guess. Quick disclaimer before we kick this bit off. These parts with Chan's in were kind of retconned in because we still wanted everyone to give their parts on each segment. So as I said in the previous one, Chan's wasn't available, but he is now, and we're going to just like jump straight into his bits. So for the first one, I think it was Out of the Cave. Initial feels.
Well, good to be with you guys. I haven't been back on a casual discussions with the boys pod for a little while. So Yeah, sorry for my lack of interaction with the fans, with the people, but I'm back. So, and what a good movie to be back for. What a great one to kick us off with. So, I think, look, let's go straight into Out of the Cave. I think the initial feels for the movie, if you don't think this movie is good, like you don't have a right, in my opinion, to be part of the MCU fan base. Like I think, and I'm going to be honest, I got to be vulnerable. I have said this in a few movies that have shocked people. This is again another one I didn't watch at the cinemas, which is shocking. I think because Thor: Dark World, and just spoiler alert, is on the last MCU ranking for me out of every single movie. I was so off put by Thor after Thor: The Dark World, and I didn't even really enjoy him in Ultron at all. Like I didn't enjoy his character arc up until this movie. So I think I just wasn't into going and seeing this movie. There was no interest in it. And then obviously everyone went and saw it and was like, this is the best movie ever. It's so funny. So like obviously I rewatched it later. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think this movie is in at least top 5 for pretty much all of us from memory. I think all the boys had this in their top 5. So look, my initial thoughts of the movie is this is the Thor that we all had a right to see in Thor 1. Like I enjoy aspects of the Shakespearean nature of Thor in that first movie that we talked about at length when we reviewed it. I don't like him at all in Thor 2. But this is a movie that combines, and this lets Chris Hemsworth be Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Like it sets him free to be the character that we all like. I enjoyed pretty much the entire movie. Like obviously we'll get into some positive and negatives in a second. I liked the spectacle of the movie, the colors of the movie, the tone of the movie, the humor of the movie. There wasn't many characters for me that were offbeat in this movie. Matt Damon was incredible in this movie. God bless Matt Damon.
He's in the next one.
Yeah, I know. I'm super excited about it. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. But I think just when I watched the movie, this is one of the MCU movies out of all of them. And I think this is why, for me, taking Infinity War and Endgame out of the equation, this is, I think, in my top 3. I think it goes Winter Soldier, Iron Man 1, and then Thor Ragnarok. So this is an MCU movie for me that I can put on at any point and watch it, and I still laugh. Like I think I said to you boys when we were originally going to film this, I forget half the lines in this movie because they're so funny. Even at the bit at the very beginning where he's talking to the guy that brings on Ragnarok, and he's like, "I'm, Thor, son of Odin," and then he says like, "Son of a bitch," and all those lines of humor are just lines that are so beautifully written, and I think it's just a great movie. So they're my initial thoughts. It's a movie that I'll always be able to watch over and over and over again. So yeah.
One of the things you said about because also this movie was a shocker to me as the movie that brought me back into the MCU hype train. I didn't really have much expectation going into it because, like you said, of the previous Thor movies and Hemsworth's performance in Ultron. But you could tell he wasn't into it. So, like you said, it was good to see him with a bit more, or actually enjoying himself in this movie. And yeah, testament to Taika Waititi. So, those were our initial thoughts. Moving on to the second segment, which is if this movie be worthy. As you know, in Thor 1, Odin puts a bit of an enchantment on Mjolnir, so only people who are deemed worthy can carry the hammer. In this part of the segment, I guess we'll talk about, I think we've already pretty much touched on all of them, but I guess really dive into the positives of the movie, like what made it worthy in our eyes. I guess you can talk about maybe a favorite scene, favorite development. You could touch on certain characters, but I guess we'll get into specifics as we go. For me, what made this film worthy was the fact that Marvel kind of just took a risk with this one. It could have easily been like an Iron Man 3 where, you know how they make a joke of the Mandarin in it? In this, they kind of make a joke of Ragnarok in a way, but I think it was a risk that was clever and actually worked for the film because there was a lot of proper development leading into Asgard is its people. So the whole destruction of Asgard, the development leading into that, Thor's path, Loki's path, pretty much everyone's path and development in this movie was really good. Even Odin at the end, it was so short, but it was like really good. And I think Josh said it you get really connected with these characters, even if their parts could have easily been throwaway characters. So for me, all those aspects were essentially what made it worthy. And if I had a favorite scene, oh, I'd probably choose. Malika will probably choose Hulk and Thor fighting, or maybe he'll be picky about that one. I don't know.
No, that isn't why. That isn't
My favorite because Hulk gets his ass beat. So
he
no,
wasn't trying. It was only 50% of his power.
All lost because of hackers. All right.
Thor was at 12%.
PC hackers.
Grandmaster hack.
He has a Chinese player name above him.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think my favorite scene was, I think it was a bit of a mix of excitement and really good development. Was when Thor first really embraces the lightning power against Hela, and Odin's like, "Oh, sorry, Grant. Are you the god of hammers?" No, and then all this. Grant probably. It doesn't matter if we all have the same one. I mean,
he turns into Raiden.
I've got
basically. Raiden, shout out, Mortal Kombat trailer came out pretty good. But yeah, that bit is probably the most best part for me. With Thor, really embraces the fact that he's actually the god of thunder, and he realizes again his worth, which has been a carrying theme throughout his movies. So yeah.
What was the segue, mate?
What made this movie worthy for you?
Oh, jeez. Well, obviously you're coming off. Obviously Thor 2. Even me being a big Thor fan, Thor 2 was just a hit and miss. Really, it wasn't that great. Obviously, then you had Civil War, which was next level. Like you've got a lot of work to do to sort of redeem yourself. I think the ambition of the humor and the characters in this is massive. Like even the Grand Master, like that could have failed so easily, but it turned out so great. Like a weird galactic, odd-looking DJ. Like who would have thought? Anyway, so yeah, but so I think. Look, there's so many scenes, just like ridiculous amount of good scenes. But obviously, you know what? Weirdly enough, I actually really enjoyed the scene where Hela just takes down the whole Asgard army. I reckon that's a boss fight scene. Like, and it really shows, okay, like this is a proper villain and this is proper power. Like, it didn't matter who stood in front of her. She absolutely demolished him. I don't know why, but that popped up in my head as one of my favorite scenes. Like, I don't know why, it just does. Yeah, I think what really makes this, because I thought Ragnarok was going to be like that main villain, but obviously bringing her in is a massive addition, and that's what made this movie worthy.
Okay, yeah, fair. I have my thoughts on Hela, but I guess we'll get to it. No, but yeah,
all right.
Yeah, Hela, fair enough. All right, Malika,
All right, things that made this movie worthy.
you.
Yeah, right. Obviously, the Hulk being in it, but I did like we sort of got little, not cameos, but like we saw, it was Marvel having a play around. Like we see the head statue with Beta Ray Bill in it when they're looking at the stadium, and we just get little touches on things. The humor, like some of the funny bits, like one of my favorite scenes is close to him and Hulk jumps out of the plane or the spaceship and he just lands. Like, it's just like we've seen it done before, but it was still hilarious.
Like watching Mitch play Warzone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Movie, and Mark, all his positives so far are the Hulk.
Yeah.
The Grand Master is great as well. Like he was quite entertaining in that movie. And I always harp on this with the other movies, and I always like the fantasy themes and that. And with Surtur, we did get another level of, like, they introduced sort of a whole another level of beings in the MCU with Surtur coming into it. And even with Hela, like, one of the most epic scenes Like we've seen how crazy Thor is in his hammer. She just stops it and just crushes it. Like, I think everyone's reaction in the movies was exactly the same when that happened. Like, we were all just gobsmacked, pretty much. As a favorite scene, the Hulk standing in front of the window. Nah.
I'm popping out of the bathtub.
Yeah, and walking to the window. No, actually, one of my favorite scenes, and even though it plays so little into the movie, like it's pure just characters, just actors in a cameo, is when they're doing the fake. When you have Matt Damon, and they're
Yeah.
doing the play, like that's a classic scene. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's kind of just making fun of Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, like
In a
it's
way.
easily one of the best scenes, and like one of the funniest scenes in the MCU.
Yeah.
And no one expected it, hands down. Like no one thought that was ever going to happen.
So, by request, David has requested to go next.
Put his hand up.
He's in the dark.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some light.
All right, David, what made this movie worthy for you, mate?
Well, I think basically, obviously, it's Taika Waititi's direction and how he approaches it. I know a lot of people were a bit worried about them moving away from the whole Shakespearean elements, but basically they were focusing on the Jack Kirby novels, which were very important because that was, during a time where the focus was on color and the focus was on that, out of this world type feel. Like, and from what I've read and heard, the idea back then was that Thor wasn't this Norse god. He wasn't in this mythological realm. He was more along the lines. He was more along the lines of a Flash Gordon type character. He was a fish out of water that was constantly interacting with all these cosmic beings, which I thought was really good for what they brought in. And I also liked how, to be honest, I had the controversial view of, I'm over Melanie. I'm over, to be honest, I know everyone got excited when they brought in Stormbreaker, but to me, that was a step back because I loved it when it was like, no, you have the power. It's been in you this whole time. And that part, I'm already going to favorite scene here, but that part where, he's coming down, he's full of lightning, and, what's the song called? Immigrants is playing. Like, that is my favorite scene. It's probably my favorite Marvel scene. And it just shows how powerful he is. And even though it is comedy, there is a lot of serious parts. I've seen that scene with Odin many times because it just shows the development of all three of them, how you see their journey and you see with Odin how he's showing Thor at this point that Thor's been living this mythological life. He's been living this life. He's believed that his life is supposed to run like a myth. It's supposed to be, this tragedy, this rise to victory, this overcome the monsters. But by this point, when he sees Odin, I was like, no. From this point onwards, your life is going to have a reality to it. You're going to experience things that don't make sense. And we see that move on to Infinity War. And even though there are still those mythical elements, you see Thor experience so much tragedy that does not fit in with the myth. It doesn't fit in with, this idea of I'm going to rise victorious. It's just a continuous downfall for him where he has to learn to basically be human. And the last things I will say is I like the fact that with Ragnarok, they took the risk of actually making Ragnarok not something they had to stop, but it was something that was meant to happen. It was an important event for them. And I like the fact that, Thor lost his eye and, cut his hair. I like the fact they tried to redefine the character. It was similar to what they did with Star Wars where Luke lost his hand. It's like I think that's such a controversial thing to do with characters when you maim them or something, because it's like, oh no, they're not going to be as powerful. But, they were able to show how that defined him as the next king of Asgard and how that would move forward. So, yeah, that's my spill.
Yeah. I was literally gonna have a segment called Deep Dives with David, but you just do it naturally, so thank you.
To be honest, it should be Deep Dive to David featuring just the biggest roasting on the group chat that no one can see. But I have to try and keep a straight face for the whole thing, and it's just like, nah, I can't.
I'm tempted to.
Dave, do you reckon that downward spiral, or not? It's not really a spiral, but do you reckon that downward trajectory of Thor is leading into the next one, where he'll possibly just become not worthy completely, and then
Yeah,
it will
well,
be Lady Thor.
yeah, well, from what I'm looking at, the way it looks is he's not going to be Thor anymore. That he's actually moving away from that and shaping his own legacy.
Yeah, he
And
becomes
like
Odin's
Lady
son.
Thor will step in. So, like you've seen the set photos, he looks more like a Kurt Russell 80s type, hero, rather like he's further moving away from that Norse god life. And I think that'll be interesting because he's going to go into waters where it's like, well, who are you now? You could be anybody. Like he could even change his name for all we know.
Well, in the comics, he's just Odin's son, Thor Odin's son. Like that's it. Like he's nothing but Odin's son.
I think that would be cool. Yeah.
Grant's crying on the inside.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm fine.
You'll have to like Natalie Portman now as the new Thor.
Yeah. No.
But it's true. The move away from Mjolnir, I agree. Like that's another favorite scene of mine. When Hela just straight up catches the hammer and just shatters it into a million pieces. It's like this is a whole new movie, a whole different world. Get ready for it. But yeah, cool.
Yeah. I think so specifically as for the movie, the positives, the narrative and the storytelling of this movie was the best for Thor that we've seen up until this point in the MCU. So I think I know some people, and I don't know, some people I've seen put this as negatives of the movie. For a movie called Ragnarok and a movie about Asgard and a movie that is so ingrained in Thor, we spend very little time on Asgard. I actually saw that as a positive. I actually think getting away from this Shakespearean world of gods and stuff like this and putting us on Sakaar and putting us in elements of things that were able to play out in the way it did, that was a real positive for me. I think another positive, obviously, like I said before, a lot of the characters are, in my perception and my understanding, I'm not Malika. I don't have a lot of comic book knowledge, like from the Malika. But I do think that this probably was their best. It's like I thought Thor, I thought even Loki in this, I thought even the Hulk especially, this was their best comic book portrayal of Hulk. Like for me to see Hulk in that form where we get actual Banner in the movie and then actual Hulk, not just like, I'm always angry, like Avengers 1. And it's like, that's crap to me. Whereas this was like Hulk in like, he's very snarky. He's throwing things at Thor. He's like a child, a man child. That's the Thor that like we want to see. The Hulk that we want to see. So that was a real positive. Look, Hela as a villain, I didn't hate, but I didn't love. So I guess it's not a positive. So yeah, that was okay. The interaction, obviously, at the start of the movie with even Doctor Strange being in there, which we did get teased in the end of Doctor Strange in that post-credit scene. I thought their interactions were really good. And it really shocks me still. There's so many people in the MCU, because of how big Infinity War and Endgame is, that they haven't interacted like that. So as in that's like the first time we've ever really seen Strange and Thor like interact like that, I think, up until this point, from what I can remember. So yeah, I think the character development was great. The humor obviously was a big standout for their balance of humor and really emotional scenes. So when they go from like having Loki and Thor in, the Sanctum with Doctor Strange and there's humor and Loki's falling for 45 minutes, straight into them being in Norway with Odin and the emotional turmoil that is, their director's ability to be able to wind that all into a movie is so well done. And lastly, I just think that the way they flipped the Ragnarok narrative on its head was so positive. So it's like, we're so thinking that there's going to be this Ragnarok that's going to come about, and then for the hero to decide to bring that about himself to save his people was such a good flip of the narrative. So I thought that was really positive.
There's so many like dream, like they always do the fights kind of well. Like they always leave you wanting more, but there's also dream like dialogue you want between different characters. Like I wish there was a bit. Oh no, there's quite a bit between Doctor Strange and Iron Man. Like there's so much of it in Infinity War. So yeah, it was good to see moments like that. Just good cameos. And yeah, definitely Doctor Strange's appearance in this was like a really good cameo. But yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head when you said like there's just a good balance of humor and development in this movie.
Touching on the whole. Sorry, you go, Caleb.
No, you go, bro.
touching on the whole thing about Ragnarok, and I've heard this in other like commentaries. You see the Ragnarok in Age of Ultron, and to be honest, I think it's similar to the whole Zack Snyder situation where there was a time where it's like, you know, with Whedon and all these other directors, that the way they were going, the Ragnarok that was set up in Age of Ultron was supposed to be the Ragnarok that they were going to go for. But due to all the changes, you know, people didn't receive Age of Ultron very well. People were feeling like Marvel was getting stale. They had to revamp things. So I don't think, so going back to what you're saying about, oh yeah, you know, people were wondering like, where was the whole Ragnarok mythological story? I think that was originally the direction they were going, but like, hang on, if we go this way, we're going to fail at this. So that's why they went the way that Taika Waititi went. And then I'll work out how he says his last name eventually. But yeah, so it's just interesting. In a way, it's sort of a reboot, but then it's not. But it's just interesting to see how things progressed.
Yeah, I think, bro, it's a reboot. I'm hoping WandaVision just erases Thor 1 and 2 from all of our memories. Just like a complete erase. Like it just does away with all of it. I wouldn't be angry about it. But yeah, I think if we don't, so let's just say hypothetically, we can all agree this is the funniest MCU movie, right? We can put that out there. That's, by far. Yeah. So if we don't get this movie changed, so if we get the Ragnarok that you're discussing, David, in Ultron with that vision from, no pun intended, WandaVision. If we don't get that vision from Thor in the movie, sorry, if we get that movie, the Whedon cut, if we want to call it that, of Ragnarok, I don't think we see Thor go on the emotional journey and the payoff of it in Infinity War Endgame.
No.
Like, we just don't get that. No. So I think it's like, this literally saved Thor's character. Like, there's no doubt about it. This, like, there's a reason why people now have Thor in their, you know, top MCU characters, where I don't think they would have if we got that movie.
Well, I think it's also Marvel's listening to their actors. Like, even take Paul Bettany as Vision in WandaVision. I feel like this is actually Paul Bettany acting. It's him being able to play what he play with his, you know, acting skills and what he can do. Like, in a way, even though, you know, they play these comic book characters, at times I wouldn't be surprised, and what with testimony with Thor, that they feel like they're just playing the same character over and over again, and they feel like they're not challenging themselves in an artistic way. And what's working well with the MCU, they're saying, no, you know what, go and do your thing. I know you're good at this, you're good at that. I've seen you do this in other movies, i.e. with Chris Hemsworth in Ghostbusters. And they're like, look, let's play to those strengths. And like, that's what worked with Robert Downey Jr. with Tony Stark. And hopefully, as the MCU progresses, it just keeps going. Rather than, okay, you got to play this character, you need to fit in with this character's mold. Being like, yes, you're playing this character, but if you feel there's room to express your artistic skills, then go for it. So I think that's why I thought Ragnarok works.
And we've seen an MCU do it now with this movie and with, let's say, Black Panther, where the stars of the movie, this being Chris Hemsworth and Black Panther being, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, being very close and connected with the director, Taika Waititi, Ryan Coogler. So in that sense, the director has the freedom to speak to its star and say, hey, where do you want to take this? Where do you want to do with the character? Rather than it just being like, you're playing Superman, hypothetically, director comes in and directs you as Superman. Doesn't direct you as Chris Hemsworth. It doesn't direct you as, they're now getting the chance to direct them as actors who are playing a role, not just the role, which is like really interesting. So I think that allows the MCU more freedom to see these different, and we've seen that teased by Kevin Feige when we got that whole, you know, phase 4 and 5 release point, where he's now once again, where I think looking at one of the most successful periods of the MCU was when they started attempting to do genres. Didn't work so well. We got the Winter Soldier that worked so well, but we're now seeing them be able to do that with good directors, with like WandaVision, definitely a genre. We know that Loki's going to be a crime thriller genre. So we know that they're going into these genres again with the right directors. So it's exciting.
Yeah. And like going back to the Asgard thing, I think my pronunciation's off the charts today.
He says it like that in the movie. So.
Yeah,
I thought you were saying that. I thought you were saying that as a joke because it was crap. I thought you were saying Asgard.
Okay. But I think the reason why those scenes, not that they're bad, but they lack in Ragnarok, besides the scene with Loki in the beginning and Matt Damon, is because I don't think that's where Tiger's focus was. I think in some way, they were filler scenes from previous movies. So I think he will be able to fully embrace his vision a lot more in Love and Thunder, which will be interesting to see.
You could say putting on Taika was almost like a revolutionary step on the, because I mean, Caleb was saying the genres in the MCU literally were mostly just superhero with a little bit of something else. But like, I was gonna ask, like, was Taika always set to do this third Thor movie, or did they?
No, I do remember reading potentially that they had bringing him on was a big deal. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there was one before this and they got booted, but at the end of the day, this is a comedy movie. Like, I don't know, like, it's an action movie. I get that too, but it more so it's a comedy movie. So, like, as a genre, this is not like Thor 2 trying to be a genre that's not a genre. It's basically just crap. This is actually like a comedy movie, but about a superhero in action, essentially.
Yeah. And like, I don't, a lot of people say, because I know people that are like, oh, they made Thor into a joke and, you know, it doesn't really fit. But it makes sense that he's at this point, because think about it, he has been away from, I'm not going to say it again. He's been away from his home for a very long time. And he's been around Tony Stark. He's been around all these different personalities. It makes sense that he's starting to change, that he's starting to become more human rather than God, because he's a lot more like, you take someone from like, you know, one country and into another country, you're going to see their personality change. You're going to see changes. So it makes sense that he's at this point where it's like, you know, I can be someone else. I can be a bit more relaxed about things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just definitely think bringing on Taika definitely shifted a little bit how the MCU went further. Like, who'd have thought they'd have a fat Thor, which was another risky play.
There's moments in the MCU where you can point back to that open the door for new viewers, right? So open the door for people that weren't on board before to now be, and this was one of them. This was one of them where people were going, oh, have you seen Thor Ragnarok? It's hilarious. Like, you need to go to the cinemas and watch Thor Ragnarok. So this opened the door for people that previously were like, man, I'm over this. I don't care about Iron Man anymore. Like, as much as that hurts all of us, there was people that were doing that. So this opened the door for new fans who then watched Thor Ragnarok, thought it was hilarious, and then rewatched a lot of the MCU to get ready for what was to come. So that was one of them. I'm seeing that happen now with WandaVision. Like, to be honest, I'm seeing people binge WandaVision because it's such a different genre to what we've already seen, that the MCU, after 10 years of owning the industry, is still finding ways to get new people to watch their content, which is unbelievable to me. Like, that makes zero sense. They own the world. Well. It's crazy. So yeah, anyway, they're my positives. We're still going about the positives. It's a great movie. So
what makes it worthy? I guess, like, I sort of already covered it in my my sort of introductory statement, in that I've really enjoyed how they were able to improve on themselves, improve on sort of the Thor franchise from the first and the second movie. Like, to go from having an okay movie and then a rubbish movie and then turning it around, and usually, like, the stigma is that, like, the further you go in to a series, the worse it gets, right? Like, it starts off high and then it gets worse with the more sequels that you have. But this one was like sort of the opposite, in that they were able to completely turn it around and get people excited about Thor again. And like, now that Thor Love and Thunder is coming out, like, I'm genuinely excited for it, to see what they do, to see how they take it. Like we said, to see what they do with Thor, whether it's going to be Lady Thor. Like, I imagine Chris Hemsworth is pretty tired of holding the mantle of Thor now that everybody else is sort of dipped out as well, that we know of. But yeah, I just really enjoyed what they did with the movie. I think, like I said in introductory, I think they did character development really well. Like, Thor, we see different levels of development in every single movie. I think, like, the first one was obviously a bit generic with, you know, becoming worthy and sort of getting over himself. And then the second one was sort of more about sort of his emotional development. And this one is sort of, again, more sort of about discovering who he is in himself. And I guess we'll hopefully see a bit more of that in the fourth one. And then, like, even Loki's development, and just seeing how far he comes. And again, just the things that pretty much echoing what you guys have said, the things that they did really well with the Grandmaster, with Valkyrie. I personally really enjoyed Korg. So yeah, I just overall I think there are plenty of things that they did right in this movie, which was a nice change based on how I felt based on some of the other movies. And I guess I'll go super generic and I'll say my favorite scene is when Thor and the Hulk fought, and just Hulk gets absolutely destroyed and has to have a change. Because we all know that if the Grandmaster didn't intervene, Hulk was done. Like, at least knocked out.
He wasn't angry enough, that's all.
But he was pure Hulk.
He just wasn't angry.
But he was pure Hulk.
He was calm, relaxed Hulk.
He's always angry. Didn't you watch the Avengers? But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the fact that, like Malika said, we got to see Hulk, and that was a bit of a nice surprise. And then you sort of saw that first flash of him being able to like tap into his true powers, I guess. So yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed it.
Actually, that's a pretty good segue into our next segment, which is I'm Always Angry. In Avengers 1, Banner says, Cap says, now might be a good time to get angry. Banner's like, that's my secret code. I'm always angry. So, you know, it's quite clear that the general consensus that we really enjoy this movie. So some of us may struggle to find negatives, but this segment is touching on parts that made us angry or negative parts of
every bit of the movie he's in.
Malika actually was pretty specific with his initial thoughts about which parts he thought weren't that great. Did you want to touch any more on those, like the humor or whatever else you had?
I enjoyed Korg for the first little bits of it, and I felt like he was getting too forced in his humor, and that's what I didn't like about that bit. Yeah, and there's just like the use, like I like that storyline, but it's the fact that I might not get to see, or probably won't get to see the proper Planet Hulk storyline. Like I've seen it, like we've seen it animated. But
you got nothing. You got nothing,
bro.
You got nothing, bro.
Not happening. World War Hulk is not happening.
Yeah, I know, and it's annoying.
Penis. Let's be honest.
World War Hulk, Red Hulk, Grey Hulk, none of it. Old Man Hulk, none of it's happening.
Yeah.
No, we might see Red Hulk.
Mark, like if you got to see the Zucchini, you would have been very happy with this film.
And Tobey Maguire's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 11 Tobies.
When you cast Tobey Maguire as Dr. Banner, I'm all for it.
What didn't I like? What didn't I like? I don't know. Like I haven't watched it in too long to be able to pick other things up that I didn't enjoy about the movie. Like I just can't remember them, to be honest. They're the only ones that stand out to me, like just off memory.
I'm gonna jump in to sort of touch on one of Malika's points before. So I think Malika brought up the fact that they brought in sort of a new level of character, right, with Surtur and Hela and all that kind of stuff, which was cool. But I kind of feel like they did a disservice to Surtur. Like he's the one that literally brings on Ragnarok and the destruction of Asgard and all that kind of stuff. And I get that they were trying to like match the humor of the movie and stuff, but they kind of reduced this massive character to like more of a meme, and it was a bit more of a joke. Like Hela was done. Again, we have our opinions about Hela, but like in terms of her power and all that kind of stuff, like she was there, right? Like she was powerful and she was a real force to be reckoned with. But I feel like with Surtur, he was a bit like he was just so discarded so easily. And then it was like, oh, okay, well, you know, to help end the movie, I guess, or to help defeat the actual threat, we'll bring back this other guy. But we'll sort of it's almost like we'll make him do our bidding, like we'll make him do what we want. Which I wasn't sure if I was much of a fan of, to be honest. And I kind of I don't really like what they did with Scourge either. Like Scourge started off like really enjoyable for me, with his scenes at the beginning and all that kind of stuff. And then he just sort of becomes the guy that stands next to Hela for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Until pretty much the end, right, where he has this sort of redemption scene. But he starts off as this really sort of funny, enjoyable character who, okay, could be playing a bit of a role here, and then he just sort of gets reduced to this extra almost. And I guess the last little again, these are just I love the movie, but I think it's just little nitpicky things. The last thing I didn't like was the Warriors 3, how they just get, like, I get why they did it, because it was like, oh, let's demonstrate the power of Hela and how easily she can discard them, but it's just like they just get thrown aside so easily, you know what I mean? Like, they're just done. Like, they're these well-known and recognized fighters and warriors, and then all of a sudden the first two just get thrown aside. The third one, Hogan, actually has some sort of fight, but even then he gets, Hulk Hogan gets absolutely demolished. He gets Batista bombed. But yeah, it was
kicked.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think how they just sort of swept aside the Warriors 3. Yeah, for me, it was kind of like they didn't make a big deal out of him, but you know what I mean? They're meant to be these sort of renowned warriors. And then when when Thor finds out they died, he's like, you get nothing. He's like, oh, okay, cool. So these people that I fought with for my entire history and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's whatever.
And that echoes what we've said in some of our other podcasts about how Marvel, they sometimes just don't do those side characters well. Like the Howling Commandos, these guys. And like, this is their deaths. Like, it should be somewhat of an effect, or that fight scene should have been a little bit longer. But yeah, like, they're just like,
at least
click them away.
The three of them team up to fight Hela and then get destroyed. You know what I mean? But it was just like the two of them that rocked up when she was at the Bifrost, and they just get discarded so easily. And then the third one gets after Hela defeats the whole of the Asgardian army, he's going to come back and defeat her himself. Like, I guess the one positive we take out of that is Lady Sif, and it's just like the fact that she's not there. Will she be reintroduced, or could she come back in Thor: Love and Thunder and play some sort of role for Thor to end his life with, if he wants?
Spoilers: she's been on set, right? She's been on set.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Because my mate's working near the set and he's seen her.
Oh, wait, what? I was going to say, I didn't see any articles.
His
It's
mate's Chris Hemsworth.
I did see a post about it on Facebook too. So she will be reprising a role by the looks of it.
It's like
What
she was
about
just walking past. Maybe they'll ask me.
Yeah, I hope she can. I only want her to be like Thor's new Fleen. Because I don't like him.
Yeah. I guess if they make him end up with, I doubt they would, but it's like if he ends up with Natalie Portman to like walk away from being Thor and all that kind of stuff, it just would feel, I don't know, kind of lame.
The only way I'm going to like Lady Thor is if Thor gets a sex change. It's the only way I'm going to like it. Let's be honest. I don't want Natalie Portman. It's 2020. Let's make it happen.
Christine Hemsworth.
Right. Yeah. Whatever works. Odin daughter. Fuck it.
The Hammer chooses her. Like, if they keep it comic accurate, then the Hammer chooses.
Hammer's destroyed.
Well, hopefully Thor's hammer chooses Lady Sif.
Like, going on to that, Malik's like, if the Hammer's destroyed, right? Because Hela.
No, isn't that back?
Is it?
No, it's a different reality. Cap returned it.
No, but he keeps. Or does he return it?
Yeah.
No, he
along with
returned
those
it.
stones.
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, because Cap's too much of a goody two shoes and can't just let Thor keep his hammer.
But doesn't he have Stormbreaker? No, but Stormbreaker doesn't choose.
Cap just wanted to carry it for a little longer to prove it. I'm like, yeah.
So interesting how they'll do that, because it's the Hammer that chooses her to become. So I don't know how she'll become Thor without the Hammer. Like, Thor can't bestow his powers unless he can.
I guess we'll have to wait in Love and Thunder and see what they do.
Yeah,
actually, I guess the question is
2
see
years.
what they'll do about Mjolnir in the first place. All right.
Or maybe WandaVision and the multiverse will change all of that.
Yeah, true.
There's lots of things that can
maybe
happen.
Professor X is able to reach into
Magneto's gonna find it and then pull it back in.
Magneto put it together.
Listen, I'm hoping combat shed some light on it. Okay, let's be honest.
I think Shao Kahn uses a hammer.
I honestly, I don't have that many. Look, there probably are plot points and character points that are negative, but because of the effect this had on the MCU, where it sits, what it did for Thor, I think there's very little that I can say about the negative. A few small ones, obviously. What's the name of the guy at the beginning of the movie? I always forget. That's going to bring on Ragnarok. What's his character name? Yeah, bringing Surtur's crown and putting it in the one place where he can activate Ragnarok is probably dangerous. Like, it's just a plot point that maybe don't keep it in the vault. Like, it doesn't. I know Thor chooses to do that, and it's like, also, could Surtur have just killed Thor earlier rather than keeping him in a cage? Like, I know that probably wouldn't happen because Thor is Thor.
Yeah.
But he's doing the typical supervillain. Like, I'm going to talk to you about my plan, and I know it was for humor, but it's kind of like, bro, like, don't do that. Did he see in the future and know that Thor was going to put it on there and call it Ragnarok anyway? I have no idea. That was a bit. I did think parts of Hela's character, like I said before, were a bit like, I'm the evil sister, I'm just going to take over the world. Her character definitely wasn't the best fleshed out villain we've ever seen in the MCU. But in saying that, around this era of time when this was being made, we did see really good quality villains. So she's being compared to that, which is kind of a bit brutal.
But I think it's also, sorry for cutting off, Carl, I've got to get back to it. I think it's also the fact, like, Kate Blanchett's a great actress. Like, and I think people would probably expect, like, I think she did, it wasn't she was bad acting. Like, I love the part where, like, she does the big dramatic speech and then they say, we don't care who you are. She's like, did you just not hear anything I just said? Like, she's very good at what she does, but sadly, she does in a way end up being a one-dimensional villain. And I don't blame that on Kate Blanchett. I just probably where the focus was in the film. So I think that's why people get frustrated with that character, because they think, well, there was just so much potential putting such a big name actor in that role. Anyway, back to you, Kel.
Yeah, I think unfortunately she is one of the fallaways from the script. A script that's amazing, a script that's so well done, a narrative that's so well done. But for us to reflect on how good the movie is, we needed Sakaar, we needed the Grandmaster, we needed Hulk, we needed Valkyrie. Like, we needed all those things. So unfortunately, she's just like a fall away of the fact that we don't get that many scenes in Asgard with her once she's basically just being a boss. Like, that's really what she is. Like, she's so powerful, she's so strong. Give us more scenes with her little wolf pet thing. Like, we need more little giant dog scenes. Like, that's just a fall away. I think that's a little bit of a negative on that point, but not a huge one. I don't think it's that big a deal for me. I think that it's just a little bit odd. Just a few other short ones. Odin's wearing like the most basic retired man clothing of all time. Like, when you see him in that scene, like, it's like he literally has just stepped out of like IRT and Wollongong and just stepped out from his group home to go see his sons. Like, he's got like the Hawaiian shirt on with the cargo shorts and like the sandals. It's just weird. I do think that the reveal of the fact that Odin did all those things in the past with Hela was a little bit like, it did change his character a little bit. I know why it's necessary for the narrative, for the story, but like, Odin to me is such a hero. So for us to see those things was kind of hard as a viewer to watch. And then I think lastly, like, as much as I love Thor and Loki, the same narrative, and as much as this movie does play on it, like, as in Thor kind of knows that he's going to betray him and trick him and etc. But it's the same narrative that we kind of have seen a bunch of times. So that's my only negative, but yeah.
And he's left the podcast. Thanks for everyone for joining the podcast.
I'm here. My dog's just going crazy.
That was just like a microphone moment, like, Thor Ragnarok.
Thor Ragnarok, the best.
Yeah. So in regards to the whole thing of Odin, apparently that was the director's commentary on Australia's rewriting of history in regards to the Indigenous. So which is, pretty deep.
That's what I'm laughing, because it was another deep cut.
Yeah.
Is that true? That's real.
Yeah, so the idea of like rewriting history, like, the whole idea, like, Odin portrays this peaceful past, and really behind the scenes, it was a lot of, all these different things. But I think it works for Odin, the idea, because what I found difficult in the previous two films was in the first Thor, I found him very, besides the fact that he banishes his son, he's a very calm, peaceful type god, and very, very focused on just having peace and harmony. And then number two, he's like,
I'm going to conquer and destroy all the elves. And I'm like, well, they've really changed the character. But I think in this one, I think they tie it all together where Odin had his bad times, he had his good times, and now he was just at peace with it all and ready to move on with his life. So I think that's where I saw that going. I have a question. Do we feel like if Hela wasn't in this film and the Grand Master was the villain, and they just had like Surtur as being like this, you know, the one-dimensional character that's going to bring on Ragnarok, but Grand Master is the main villain, would it have worked better?
I personally don't think so. I think it then falls into the category of an Ant-Man and a Wasp, which I still think is a good movie. I still enjoyed it. I just think the villain in that movie is very underwhelming for me.
Yeah.
You did kind of have these two smaller villains that were interacting, but then they're really not that bad. Whereas I think the Grand Master is such a nice character that I think he's evil at his core.
Yeah.
We like him as viewers. So I think then it would fall into that category of that where we don't ever really fear for like, and obviously Thor's whole arc is family oriented. So having his sister be there is such a big deal for him, like for his character arc, him and Loki. I think Loki is one of those underrated characters in a sense that we don't really look at what Thor went through with losing all of his family the same way that Loki did. Like he lost his mom and his dad too, even though they weren't really his mom and dad, but the ones that raised him. And he's now having to go up against his sister. So that's the same as what Thor is. We just don't really look at it from that perspective. So
yeah, true. One last point, going back to what I was saying about like the villain and so on. I think carry on from that. I think we'll be disappointed if Christian Bale's villain in Love and Thunder is the same as Cate Blanchett of Hela, because again, a very big named actor, you expect a lot from that villain. So
Well, the only thing with Hela in this movie was that, like we've said, she wasn't bad. It's just she didn't stand out. There was just too much other stuff that just took the spotlight a bit more than she did. And like I think both of you have said it, the parts on Asgard just they didn't drag, but again, they just didn't stand out. So, but they still played like a vital part in the movie. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that she still has a place. But if they don't do Christian Bale's character justice, then yeah, it'll be pretty disappointing. All right, Grant. Are there any parts that made you angry?
Well put.
End credits.
I don't know. Not really. Not really. Like, to be honest, what didn't I like about this movie?
Man, that's loyalty right there.
Did you like Thor getting a haircut?
You touched on something very sensitive there. I didn't. But I think it was necessary for character development. But I get my haircut. No one says a word, so get over it.
Like, for me personally, I didn't find the whole haircut thing to be such a massive issue. But apparently a lot of people just like were really cheesed off about it. I'm like, dude, it's a haircut. It'll grow back.
It's fine. Trademark of Thor to have that hair. Like he gets his hammer and his hair destroyed in one film. It's full on. That's the most emotional part of this film is the haircut, let's be honest. But Stan Lee did it, so you're not going to get a better hairdresser than that. I think the only negative I can take from this film is knowing that I got nothing. I got nothing. No negatives for me.
All right. David's done.
So can I just ask, did you give this like a perfect score then? This film?
I'm pretty sure I did.
Decent.
Or we all have. I don't know. I don't think it was my number one on the movies. I know that.
I think David's done his disappearing act, but yeah, he did say keep him last. All right, so for my parts that made me angry, I think we've pretty much all said it, how there was definitely potential for certain characters. I think it was still done well, but they could have been done more. Like I will say, like, for example, Hela, right? She was a very good villain, very powerful. I think they showcased the power very well. But I feel like some aspects of the movie took away from the strength in her role. But it's hard to say that kind of thing, like how good she is as a villain, because we've had villains like Thanos, and he just like kind of set too high of a standard at this point. I feel like if you tried to focus more on Hela and the whole Ragnarok thing, you'd probably get another Dark World where it's kind of just drags and it's kind of boring. So I'm kind of contradicting myself there, but as a like I'm trying to pick a negative at this point.
I
and-
guess
yeah.
it's kind of hard to do like big bads in a one-off movie, right? Because like Hela could be a villain that you could do a little saga about or a little series about, right? But because of the nature of Thor, we have to reduce her to one movie and him defeating her in one movie so that we can move on to we can move back to Thanos. Apparently though, when this movie came out, there was speculation that Hela was going to actually come back as the product of Thanos' desire. I think I read. So they essentially was a theory that Thanos was going to bring her back, which could have been cool, but
Because he's in love with Death.
spoilers doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was gonna say death because she's a goddess of death, right?
Zeta, when you were
Yeah.
talking, I found a negative.
Oh, wow.
No, it's just the scene that's a negative.
Grant's negative is the fact that we all have negatives.
Yeah. The M16 scene at the end.
Yeah.
They are not unlimited clip. All right. This is not the hackers on Call of Duty. This is
Triple boost.
honestly, man. That scene annoyed me. That
What if
really.
they're Asgardian M16s?
Oh well, they're clearly from Texas, as we found out. But yeah,
Asgard.
that's the negative. That scene. That's like, I know that's like considering everything that happens in the film. That's not the most far-fetched thing, but it is for mortal humans like ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
that does. Josh said it already about Scourge. His character, he was like the one, I guess, as well. I didn't care too much for. Like, I thought maybe he was just comedic relief, but it seemed like he was just generic. He wasn't even that. I mean, he did have development though, so props there. Like the redeeming moment for him, and him just being an opportunist, I guess. So there was some development, but like I didn't really connect to him. But I guess that's not really what he was there for. But yeah, anyway.
But you know what? Even Hela cut him off. Even Hela cut him off when he tried to talk about his life story. She was like,
yeah, that's true. So maybe
don't-
they did that on purpose.
Yeah, why should we?
All right, that's true. Okay, David, did you have any parts that made you angry?
It is really hard to find a part. I personally, what would I say? Probably, I will say the parts. Okay, so with the Warriors, so when she's in Asgard, I won't say it made me angry, but to me, they were the boring bits of the movie. They weren't the exciting bits. To me, they were more reminiscent of just the dullness that it had really become. I think the only highlights to that was basically Heimdall and what he was able to achieve in those scenes. Like, they made him pretty OP and pretty cool.
David's definitely get arrested, dude.
They look like sirens.
They've cut off his internet connection. He's being surrounded.
what is going?
Why did he? Oh. All right. Well,
The next shot will be a cop holding his phone. This is all boys. Pack it up.
what I
Oh,
the cop's like,
The cop joins the podcast.
So, boys, what section are you up to? I've been following your pod.
all right.
But yeah, honestly, I can't be like
You're back.
everything that people do have qualms with this movie, like, you know, them blowing up Asgard and them making a joke of it, all those type of things I can find reasonings for. So, no, I can't say there's really anything I hate about this movie.
Show us the fine.
The fine?
Yeah.
No, that goes into deep dives with Dave where we discuss whether fines. I'm not going to get blocked on Facebook by Mark Zuckerberg, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Emily, shout out to Emily for driving David around so he can join the podcast, by the way.
I guess we can move on to our next segment. MVP. So this part is Marvel's valuable player. I guess who for you in this movie essentially carried the film? If you could pick one
Sub-Zero.
character. Sorry,
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero. Okay, so why Sub-Zero?
Meek.
Because he copied Iron Man's line of I am Iron Man, I am Sub-Zero.
All right. Okay, well, actually, might as well start with you, Grant. Who's your MVP?
Well, obviously Thor. Like, that's pretty standard. But
Whoa.
how can you a couple of mentioned the scene when he turns his what do you call it? Turns his sparkles into lightning. Like that scene there, like obviously it goes in a little bit more emotional side of things of his, but that scene, like that's an MVP Marvel moment. Like that's one of the best Marvel scenes, and obviously that carries on when he spoilers, comes back in Infinity War with his Stormbreaker. Like obviously you don't really get to see him using just the lightning ever again. Like since then, like it's just he has the Stormbreaker. So, but yeah, like Thor, obviously the main character, massive character development, new haircut, looking good, and that's pretty much my MVP.
Yeah, nice. All right, David, who's your MVP? Are you there? Or did you get called?
Do you want to give your MVP movie?
Who, me?
Emily.
Oh, Emily, who's your MVP? You can't say David. Wasn't in the movie.
I was going to say Jackie Chan, but he dies too quick.
The police. They have to say that. The police that pulled David over because.
Oh god.
All right. Actually, I might as well give mine. So, as we've said, like the development of the characters in this movie is so good. You could give like characters like the Grandmaster the MVP. I was thinking about giving Loki the MVP because he always carries in most of the films he does, and he has his own series coming up. So how much more attention does he need? So I feel like for once, I got to give Thor more of a fair shake in this film, especially because this was the one where it brought Hemsworth himself back into the Thor franchise because he was ready to drop out. I think.
Yeah.
At a point during Dark World and Age of Ultron, he wasn't keen on the role anymore. So the fact that he was down, it showed in his character that he was just having fun. And to see that carry in the movie and really the development of Thor throughout the movie, I like that his I guess essentially his thing is his character always gets humbled and then he rises to power again. And it was done great in this movie. Like we've said, Mjolnir was destroyed. His hair was cut.
I think Mark's
Even the throne to Asgard, which really hasn't been in reach for him ever. I mean, it's been a reach, but he's never been ready to take it. He's onto other parts anyway. So I think his development is so good and so strong for me, especially in this film. I got to give props to, Thor as the MVP and the one to carry the film at this point.
I mean, it's kind of hard to choose anyone but Thor. Like, to not be too generic, but like you were saying, Zeta, like all the characters, like do a good job, right? Like Grandmaster's good, Valkyrie's good, Korg is good, Loki's good. But it's just like in this movie, like I don't think they shine enough to be able to say they carried the movie, right? Like I think in this one, like it's pretty clear that it's Thor. Like his development, again, like you said, even outside of the actual character himself, like Chris Hemsworth sort of coming back into the franchise and back into the swing of things. Like Thor was the one who carried his own movie, which I guess is how it should be, really. Like you think about it. Could say Doctor Strange, because without Doctor Strange, they wouldn't have seen Odin, and then Hela just would have rocked up, and they would have had no warning and just killed them all. So,
yeah, actually, part of the worthy aspects, that cameo by Doctor Strange. Yeah, there was good chemistry in that scene. I mean, and it was funny him like just teleporting Thor all around the house on Bleecker Street, and then the interaction between him and Loki has two different magic.
Yeah, he wrecks him.
magic
would've
uses.
I would have liked to see more interaction between Strange and Loki, just because I feel like that would have been fun. But yeah, I guess in terms of going back to the original question, who carried the film? Yeah, I think it's Thor. Thor stood out, which is again how it should be, I think.
All right.
Wait, hold on. Could Thor have got to Asgard without the Bifrost?
Could who? Hela.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably eventually.
Because, like, what did she use to actually spawn there in the first place?
She did transport as Loki and Thor were transporting. But like, I don't know, similar, I feel like similar to when they're on Sakaar, there's always like these little, because Loki knows back doors, and this was called the Devil's Anus. So it's literally a back door. But I feel like she would have known or at least found one.
I will say though,
It's when she respawns, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo was a lot funnier in this film than obviously the other ones. He was a bit more dull and out. Like his humor in this film was very surprising. He had some good lines.
Yeah, I feel like he was more himself as well. I think that's definitely something that's definitely something testament to Taika's directing, where he kind of just let him be more themselves. So Malika, are you going to choose Hulk or?
No, I'm not. But I'm not going to choose Thor either.
Scourge.
Hey.
I'm going to choose Meek. Nah.
I was literally about to say me.
I'm going to choose Odin for this one. Without Odin, none of this happens. Full stop.
But can we say he carried the movie though?
It was just MVP. It's my personal MVP for this.
Okay. When you say without Odin, none of this happened, like it was his screw up that caused it. So
That's what. Who helps Thor unlock his powers as well?
Hey,
Odin.
if he didn't die, this wouldn't have happened, right?
Odin pretty much just goes, so boys, I locked your sister away, who's super powerful, by the way, pretty much immortal, and now I'm going. See yous.
Yeah, I remember rewatching that scene, and it literally, like, without all the fluffiness and all that kind of stuff, it was literally, wait, boys, I screwed up pretty bad. Good luck fixing it.
Yeah.
Your mum's calling.
It's like Thor, you're finally mature enough to be king. You're going to have to blow the whole place up.
Yeah. And so he's the catalyst for the whole thing.
He
actually
literally had 10 minutes in the movie.
Yeah, and it's all he needed.
Out of a 2-hour movie, he got 10 minutes, and he's your MVP. You know what?
Actually, and I forgot to mention this before, and like what you were saying as well, Josh, how they could have given Hela like a whole another movie as well, was when she breaks the ceiling inside the palace and you see the real history. I thought that was pretty cool. And again, that was annoying that we don't see them. Like, they could make that a whole movie, just Asgard, like 20,000 years ago.
They wanted to do a TV series on Thor and like the history, or even like the history of Odin and stuff. Like that would be.
Yeah, it would be epic.
Like a younger Odin.
Yeah.
And have his father in it.
All right, boys, copyright this right now.
It's going to happen. Record this.
Who plays young Odin though?
If Segawa doesn't get us first.
Odin.
Josh Brolin.
Sam Neill.
Teleported to his house. How'd you teleport to your house?
David, who would you cast as a young Odin?
For a second, I thought Grant said Josh Groban, and I was like, interesting choice.
Another word.
This is a hard one. Has everyone gone on this one?
Almost.
Who's that guy? You guys won't know him. He's off Watchmen. He's like
the show or the movie?
Yeah.
What's his character?
No, the movie. His name's Matthew Good. Look him up. I don't know what he's been in that you guys would have seen.
Is he good?
What do you mean? He's a good actor. But, like,
who does he play?
What, in Watchmen?
No, you're saying MVP. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about? So
I asked him.
Who would play a young
I asked him who would he cast
right,
for a young Odin.
No way.
What?
I can't see this guy's. This guy's like scrawny af.
What about The Rock? Or Vin Diesel?
What? Odin? Anthony Hopkins.
Uh,
Odin. You
Vin
need
Diesel
more-
has a big
yeah.
role as Groot, Malika. It's very
Or
true.
Idris Elba could play him.
Fast and Furious 10, spoilers, Asgard.
After they come back after they go to space and then they find Asgard.
Yeah. It's all linking up now.
The Guardians go and pick them up.
Oh, what if one of his brothers did it? Like one of the other Hemsworths. I mean, because they kind
Nah.
of look. They look okay. Whatever.
Wesley Snipes.
Jamie Lannister could play young Odin.
I was thinking him too.
Oh, no, I don't think Nikolai could do it. Nikolai.
You know what? Actually, weirdly enough, I had a weird thing about this. They reckon Matthew McConaughey would be a great fit.
I saw that in Google as well.
Yeah,
Matthew McConaughey gets put forward for any single role that
I know.
anybody thinks of. Literally.
Yeah.
You could be like, oh, who
He's
do
a
we want to
goat.
play Martin Luther King in this next movie? And Matthew McConaughey will be on that list.
Yeah.
They
How
could
do you
get
go? How do you
They
go?
could get
from
the guy that
Frontline-
plays Varys. The eunuch.
Matthew McConaughey.
No.
Anyway, to Malika's original point,
Chris Evans for young Odin.
he
Before or after Serum?
Mo- pre serum.
Right, I got it. Brendan Fraser. Come on.
And we've made it back to George of the Jungle. It's been a long time.
Oh God.
We've come full circle.
Anyway, to Malika's choice of Odin as MVP, I mean, I don't know if I could choose him as the one that carried the film, but like I see why he deserves
He's the
praise.
catalyst.
Like his dialogue in this movie is great. I will say though, it's like it's pretty selfish. Some of the stuff he does, like, oh yeah, and I have a
In
daughter.
this movie.
Yeah, well,
Mark,
he
don't
just
come back.
like kind of like leaves him to his daughter, who's the end of the world. I
The
understand.
guy's had a hard life.
Yeah, I get it, but like it's just like, oh
Hey,
yeah,
Get over it. You're a god who signed up to be king. That's part of the JD.
yeah.
What you
But
signed
like
on the dotted line for.
outside of that, yeah, Odin's like awesome. I loved it, and I do like the fact that at the end of it, he's like, I'm gonna die now. I'm kind of over it all. I'll leave it to the future
He's like-
generation.
He leaves so abruptly too. Like watching that scene, there isn't like usually like there's a pause, right, where like the dad looks at his sons and like they all have this sort of moment, and then the dad leaves. But in this one, Odin says something. I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says something and then dips.
Remember this place home, which ends up being very important in
Yeah, right.
Endgame.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
But
so
like,
he-
there's no. But usually there'd be like, remember this place home, and then there's like this little 10-second, 15-second.
All right. I'll
Yeah.
recontextualize it. An ad for Norwegian tourism. It fits really well in that context because then you just see like come to Norway in the
Norway?
like, golden stars.
Josh, are you about to say? I thought you were about to say it. By the way, Scarlett Johansson, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Yes, it is.
I didn't think
I don't
you'd
know
come,
how.
but
I don't know how
thank you.
Malika got Scarlett to come.
Like,
to go.
What an
You
honor.
do need to loosen up a little bit. A bit stiff.
And you're not even in this movie, but we appreciate the insight.
She's in it in spirit.
For those
That'd be
listening on
great.
audio, Malika has Scarlett Johansson in a chair as his background.
He tips his head in.
Anyways, what are we
That'd be
talking
great.
about? Oh yeah,
The real Scarlett Johansson's in his basement.
scary.
With a
Okay,
couple of others.
Zeta's got to edit that one out of the clip.
what's? Oh yeah, we're up to MVP. Oh, David, who's your MVP for this film?
Can I ask who has been picked?
Me, Grant, and Josh chose Thor. Malika chose Odin, which is okay. Yeah. So who for you carried the film? It doesn't matter if it's the same. It's
Carried the film, David. Who
I
carried the film?
Who's your top
Okay,
character?
well, Okay, so I think the person that carried the film was Ivan Vanko from Iron Man 2. No, I'm joking.
I knew you were going to troll. I knew it.
I have the voice for it.
Mickey Rourke's Bird from Iron Man 2.
What's my? That was in the post-credit scene. But yeah, for me, I would say Loki. To be honest, besides the spin-off show, I feel this is besides what happened at the beginning of Infinity War, this was the ending of his arc, and it was done in such a great way, as in, because we've seen in the, like, I've constantly complained about the whole thing about Thor and Loki, like, oh, Loki, you've betrayed me. Loki's like, I'm going to betray you again. Oh, no, you betrayed me again. I didn't see that coming. And now it's like, I don't care. I don't care. It's who you are. You are you. And I'm ready to move on. I don't care about what you do. And this is when Loki's like, who am I? Where do I fit into all this? And I think if you actually notice, Loki he's more the fish out of water in this than everyone. Oh man, how am I going to keep a straight face? But like, because he doesn't fit into it. He doesn't fit into the silliness of it. He doesn't fit into the absurdity of it, which Thor does. Because to him, he's from that world of me and my brother bicker, we fight. And now he's seeing that Thor has moved on and the world is moving on. And he's like, where do I fit into it? Where do I move forward? Do I need to cheat the Grand Master? And then do I need to, do this and do that? And even like you see him in the scene where he's in the jail telling Thor his plan. And again, you just see the indifference in Thor's face. And then even when they're in the elevator, again, Thor expresses like, and then you see in the end, Loki's like, I want to be the hero, because the only reason why I wanted to be the villain was to be the rival to my brother, which he kind of says in the first Thor film. And now he doesn't have that purpose anymore. He redefines his purpose. In saying that, who knows what's going to happen in the spin-off show. But yeah, I would say him. And I've been not looking at the chat this entire time so I can get my point across, but you guys need help. I'm sorry. There's nothing more to say.
Yeah, well, I did say Loki was definitely a high contender if I was going to choose a different MVP to Thor himself. To be honest, we all essentially gave Thor Dark World a hard time, but that was one of my favorite things in the movies, the interactions between Loki and Thor. And I actually think it's better than their interactions in the first Thor movie. Like,
Robin, won't you agree that those scenes are made better when they recast Tom Hiddleston with Matt Damon and they recast Thor with Luke Hemsworth? I feel like those scenes were portrayed a lot better in that way.
yeah, especially when he's apologizing for like ruling over Earth and stuff like
That scene alone deserves an Oscar, man. When he's like, I'm a trickster. I love that. It's like one of the best things ever. I laugh so much at that scene.
Well, honestly, if it wasn't for Thor Ragnarok, I wouldn't appreciate Dark World as much as I partially do.
I think they should just
Build a
read
statue of me with a helmet.
Yeah. The horns. Oh, Lord. Too much.
This is a very tough one for me. Very, very tough. Look, I know it's obvious, and I don't know what the other boys said on their one. I'm probably just gonna have to give it to Thor.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like odd, and it's like, wow, it's a Thor movie. But honestly, with a lot of the other MCU movies, I probably wouldn't be giving it to the namesake of the movie, because there'd be so many other characters that I'd probably give it to, and there are in this movie. But in this movie, because of what this movie did for Thor as a character and his character arc and his development, and I now appreciate Thor. Like, we don't get that awesome Infinity War scene where he comes down with Stormbreaker unless we have this movie.
Yeah.
So I have to give him, Marvel's most valuable player. I have to give it to him, because this is the movie where we look back on in another 10 years' time and go, wow, that's the Thor. He's Thor. That's the God of Thunder. We see him be able to channel, lightning through his body, all this stuff. It's like amazing comic book payoff Thor. So he has to be my MVP.
I think 4 of us chose Thor, and the others were Odin, which was Malika, and Loki, which I think. Did you choose Loki, David?
Yeah, I chose Loki, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, it was mostly Thor choices, which is
it makes
surprising.
sense.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the next segment. I think we all got our MVPs out of the way. I think Thor was the majority lead on that one.
Yes.
But yeah, Loki and Odin, close runner-ups. Okay, we'll move on to this next segment, which is a couple of master assassins. Call back to the part where Stark is referring to the Avengers, and he just refers to Black Widow and Hawkeye as a couple of master assassins. And I guess this segment is all about giving any secondary characters that we can think of praise that they deserve in this film. Like, they may not be MVP, but they definitely had an impact in the movie. So
Have we just relegated Black Widow and Hawkeye to side characters just inadvertently?
They've always been extras.
yeah.
Find out.
All right.
Yeah, 100%.
Far out. Like, he didn't really get a big role, but what he did do was pretty important. He literally saved all the citizens. Like, literally took the sword, stopped Hela from raining death on everybody.
Grew his hair out.
Like, little bits of the scenes. He helped Thor find the devil's anus so he could go in it. These scenes weren't long, but the scenes that he had were literally one of like the most helpful scenes in the movie. Like, he helped Thor get back to Asgard. As I said, he saved all the citizens. He defended them for a little while. Really good scenes. Like, he's my master assassin.
Yeah, nice. He's always been a steady sixth man though, in like all the movies. Like, yeah, even up to Infinity War, where he sends away the Hulk with his dying breath. Yeah, spoilers. Yeah, I mean,
Infinity War, so sure.
You could say you wish you did more with Heimdall, but I think for what his role is in the movies, I'd say it was enough. And actually, I thought it was a pretty cool bit, which I didn't know he could do, was, you know, when Thor looks through his eyes at the state of Asgard. I didn't know that was a thing.
I don't think anyone knew that was a thing.
Is it a thing?
I have no idea. I don't actually know if it's one of his powers.
Iconesis.
I was like a VR.
All right. Does anybody else want to give their master assassin character?
Korg.
Hulk.
I'm going to say, look, the real obvious one, and I'm not sure what you guys said, obviously is Korg. Like, not that he's underrated, but like a great side character, a great entry into the MCU. We see it pay off again in Endgame. Like, he's awesome. I'm not going to spend too much time on him because I just think you can watch up any YouTube video about Thor Ragnarok and they're going to talk about Korg. Like, he's great.
Someone said Korg, right? I mean,
Good for
I said Korg.
So is there like massive Korg hate in this chat? Because like Korg's great. I cheer when he came back in Endgame. Like, his humor was fresh to me. Like, that New Zealand / Aussie humor, we haven't seen that in a Marvel film for.
I don't know. That was what it was. Hey, like for me, it was humor that was a little bit closer to home.
Yeah, I agree.
It was like, oh, glad it's like, even though I don't usually care about like, representation of Australians within America, like, what do I care? But like having it be that kind of like, and that little surprise as well, because when he rocked up, obviously you had sort of the first Islander person you had there was Grandmaster's assistant, and then the next one you rock up in jail is this really sort of comedic relief, and it's Korg, and it's, you know, humor that sort of hits close to home, and I really enjoyed Korg.
I think it was a good showcase too of Taika Waititi's style of humor and whatnot. And yeah, it stood out well in this film for me as well, because I was, again, because of that different approach and something fresh, I rather enjoyed it. But you know,
I like how as well they left, out of Korg and Meek, they only let one of them speak. I feel like for me it could have been overwhelming if both of them were sort of riffing off each other, I feel like it could have started well, but then, like to Malika's point, I feel like it could have gotten old very quickly if it was the both of them. But I like the fact that it was just Korg, because it sort of kept it like, it was still, for me, it didn't get tiring because it was like those sort of little bursts of humor every now and then.
But like Meek was good at being that silent humor. Like, you know, you see when, you know, Korg does the whole thing where he hits the wall and says the thing about the ghost, but you just see Meek in the background with the knives. You know, like,
that's the thing. Like, if both of them had the New Zealand accent and were sort of riffing off each other, I feel like that could have gotten old quickly if they were sort of overusing that humor.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
like that it was just sort of Korg, and then like you said, Meek had his own sort of silent humor that augmented Korg, if anything.
That's all right. I was saying that's quite a serious chat between Loki and Thor, and then here comes Korg and just straight away with the comedy. Just piss off, ghost. That's like my favorite line from Korg though is another day, another duck. I love that.
But that's the thing, because like, you know, we could have easily gone into this and expected Deadpool humor or expected Guardians of the Galaxy humor, but for me with Korg, it's like even when he's telling the whole thing, he says, "Oh, so how'd you end up here?" And it's like the whole story about the pamphlets, and you know, the only people that rocked up was his mum and her boyfriend, who he hated, and just like it was just surprise. It took me by surprise. Like maybe this sort of humor will be overdone in the next few years. And like, oh yeah, but like at the time, I was like, this is fresh humor for me that I can enjoy. And even like when he makes the comment when Ragnarok happens, to me, there's just been so many like disasters happening in these sort of movies. It was just a nice different take on it. That rather than being like, oh no, Asgard's been destroyed, like yes, sure, it makes a bit of a joke out of it, but it was just a new take on a horrific disaster. But yeah.
My underrated characters that I think don't get spoken about enough, and from an acting point of view in this movie, like number one, I want to mention before, I think Mark Ruffalo as Hulk in this movie is phenomenal, like exceptional. We actually, for once again, got to see Mark Ruffalo act as Hulk, which for me is one of the reasons why I was so, and I get why they did it, so disappointed by what we got in Infinity War with him, where he wasn't able to be that, where he wasn't able to act out that. But I think in this movie, we get to see him actually act both as Banner and as Hulk. And we get to see him play with those characters in a way that I think is so unique and special. And look, to be honest with you, I hope, and I don't know whether when we get to She-Hulk on the TV series, are we going to get Professor Hulk, or are we going to somehow go back to, I don't really know. We'll hope and see. But I think this is the purest form of Hulk that we're ever going to see.
Yeah. I said in regards to, because when I did the Incredible Hulk one, I think I basically said I like the fact that Edward Norton's went into the psychology of Bruce Banner, and I like that aspect, and that's the sort of stuff I like about Hulk. But I understand that's not what Mark Ruffalo's Hulk is about. So I go two ways. Either you go very deep with it, or you just have a lot of fun with it. Don't be middle ground. And I like how in this film, like, you know what, we're just going to have fun with it. He's a science nerd that turns into a big green monster, and I feel like Mark Ruffalo just played that fantastic, and it made sense to me. Like even the fact he's wearing Tony's clothes and he's so awkward and he's just freaking out. He's like, what is going on? It really worked well, and it's just funny to see that chemistry between Mark Ruffalo and Hemsworth. You think, oh yeah, it makes sense. You know, Thor's a big god. You know, Hulk is a big green monster, but Banner's like this scrawny science nerd, and you know, Chris Hemsworth is this like surfer muscle guy. Yet they play off each other so great, and you can actually believe they're good friends. Yeah. So yeah, it's done really well.
Yeah, and I will say this is probably, I prefer this version of the Hulk rather than the Endgame one. I know like Professor Hulk was more useful and all, but I don't know. Just in that movie, they didn't really showcase too much of him. But in this, you actually got to see Hulk as Hulk and Banner as Banner. Like, I kind of like that contrast in a way. Whether they do any more of that, like I get the Hulk has to grow and develop and change, but I don't know.
Quick question. Obviously, like with Hulk, for him to turn into Hulk by comic book lore, it's Bruce Banner getting angry, correct? That's the way that it happens. So for him to stay as Hulk for 2 years, like what level of control does Banner have? Like, does that? I know they're two separate people in a way, constructed as one person. But can Hulk, once he's Hulk, just decide to stay as Hulk, or does Banner have to be at a level of anger at all times? Like, as in, how much? What's the dichotomy between the breakdown of that?
Yeah, they didn't really like explain it much in the movie, but Banner said it was a point where it was like, because usually Banner triggers it, but this time Hulk was the one, like he says, like they've come to an understanding where they're both, like the analogy of the car, they're both driving. But for that period, Hulk was like the one that was in control, and Banner was the one who was
in the
locked
backseat.
out. And he said it was in the trunk, which is even more worse. And it just took like a trigger, Hulk seeing Black Widow, for Banner to come back out. So it was like it wasn't really well explained, but it seems like more and more when they don't see eye to eye, like in Infinity War, they say that the reason Hulk didn't want to come out was not because he was afraid of Thanos, but he was just overfighting people. He just didn't want to. Come out. So it seems like I don't know. To me, it's not very clear how it works.
Yeah,
But
it was just a bit
also-
confusing.
Also, Hulk's getting more intelligent by this film.
Yeah.
So he goes from being just the big green monster that comes out to actually speaking. So perhaps the more Hulk grows to become intelligent, the more he's able to take control. I don't know.
Yeah. So it seems more like it's a half-half, and once the other person turns, I guess he can choose to stay in that form. So that's why there has to be, I guess, that understanding between the two of them for it to work out.
I do feel, this is a side note, but I do feel the whole thing, even though I enjoy Professor Hulk, and I'll bring that up in the Endgame podcast, I do feel like we knew that the resolution was going to be, okay, well, Hulk and Banner can't agree. How do we resolve this? Combining them doesn't really answer that. That's like saying, okay, Tony and Cap can't agree, so they will step into a machine, they'll combine the two of them, and then they're Iron Man, Captain America, and one. Like it just doesn't make sense to me as a resolution to that arc. Yeah.
Captain Man.
Like imagine
Captain
if you just see like Chris Evans with Tony Stark's face deep faked onto his face, and it's like, so we figured out how to resolve our conflict.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's still a lot unclear about the Hulk. He's always just kind of a side character. Sorry, Malika.
Malika.
This
film.
Nobody. Grandmaster for me.
Grandmaster as well, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm just upset that Grandmaster didn't get more time.
I reckon we'll see him again. I reckon.
He is pretty good.
He is the collector's brother, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got the end credit scene.
I think I didn't realize how Jeff Goldblum-ish he was until I saw the Grandmaster. I was like, has he always been like this? Then I went back and watched Jurassic Park, watched interviews with the guy. I'm like, wow, he's like his own human. Like he's a completely different species of person. Like
He's a bit eccentric.
If you haven't seen it,
Understatement.
If you haven't seen it, you've got to watch the Hot Ones interview with Jeff Goldblum. Because you see him he lives on a different plane of existence. Like, he asks him a direct question, and this guy goes off into like a 30-minute tangent on something completely unrelated, but somehow it makes sense. It's like,
So it's like Mr. Fitzpatrick over here, your father. We used to ask him questions. We would go on an hour story.
Or Twyford.
Yeah.
I kind of wish Jeff Goldblum was a history teacher because I reckon he would just talk about a history that just doesn't exist. He'd be like, so the aliens.
But you'd be convinced.
you'd believe
You wouldn't have periods. You'd have a whole Tuesday doing history lesson.
Yeah, Grandmaster, because he literally disintegrates that guy just in front of Thor.
Melt stick.
Wasn't his cousin?
Yeah,
That's right.
You've been pardoned from life.
I like
That's such a bad joke to make.
when he says, "Don't interrupt me," and she hands him the stick. He's like, "No."
Yeah, his assistant is pretty fluck. She's just like, she helps with the comedy in the movie.
It starts with a B. Trash.
And I love how he calls Thor what the deceptive god, Lord of Thunder, like the tricky Lord of Thunder or something.
From Asgard.
Yeah.
He just sexist Thor the whole movie. He's like, "What are those sparkles?" You know what I like? When the Grandmaster's introducing Thor to the fight at the end, he's like, "Watch out, he's make sparks." He's like a little slide dig at him.
Why doesn't Malika have Grandmaster's assistant as his background?
I was thinking of doing.
Answer the question.
Mark,
She doesn't,
front, bro.
she doesn't rank on the list.
Cut that out, Peter.
Bro.
Blasphemy.
Wow.
She isn't a very attractive person.
Wow.
I was thinking of putting one of the girls, like when Loki is being Odin and he's got the two assistants next to him. Or one of the other Valkyries.
Could have put Meek in there.
Yeah.
Big Mill.
Oh, Mick's dead. Yeah, I stopped it in on the bridge. I felt bad about it. Been carrying around all day.
Valkyrie, her character.
100% Valkyrie was going to be another one.
Yeah.
Meh.
Oh, really? You didn't like her that much, Green?
Really?
What? She was great.
I just wanted to create some controversy in the group. Just fly little man, create an earthquake.
Yeah, Fitz just responds like that. What?
Yeah.
Because like I feel like, okay, I'm not going to get all feminazi here, but like I like the fact that she didn't have to be a love interest, that she was cool in her own right, and like I don't know, she was just cool. Like
An independent single woman.
Yeah, without trying to get too, like David said, too feminist or anything, in a movie that is dominated by male characters being badasses and stuff, and then being these like crazy big bads, and like having someone who's not equal but almost pretty much on the level playing field, like be sort of up to that standard as well, like is pretty cool.
Are we just forgetting?
She held her own.
Are we just forgetting that the immortal evil is female?
That's what
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
like-
but that's like she's a main villain. Obviously, like you can't make the villain weak.
Oh, Ronan.
Oh, Ronan,
You know-
Ronan's strong, dude. He just died to a dance battle. That's different.
Yeah. You know what though? Valkyrie is like obviously a bit of an alcohol addict in Ragnarok, and then she sort of frowns upon it in Endgame when Thor's the addict. It's like she's worn off it. But
Yeah.
Thor- yeah.
And you love how they didn't make a big deal of it. They just showed character progression without being like, "Oh, I'm not an alcoholic anymore." It's just she changed.
You know what I
know-
liked? Sorry, Grant. The bit where Thor is talking to her, and he's like, "I love that there's a strong." Oh, he's talking about how he had praise for the Valkyries, but I like how realistic his response is without trying to be insensitive. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I like
Felt
this, this strong female power, like, but like he was just like, I like how realistic that is for instances like this. We're
Yeah.
trying to not approach it in
Yeah,
a way that's undermining.
Well, like you
Up to
got
the
to also
Valkyries so much.
Sorry.
I wanted to be one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they realize they're all women.
I know she's spoken about a lot, and I know that people do love her, but I think Valkyrie in this movie is incredible. I think that she is fantastic. What is it? Tessa Thompson? Is that who plays
Yeah.
Valkyrie?
Yeah.
I think this in some ways for me, I think she was obviously in some big things before this, but to me as a fan of hers, this was her coming out party. Like as in, here's Tessa Thompson. She's incredible. She can act. She's going toe to toe with Chris Hemsworth as far as lines, dialogue, acting, and with like to do it with Chris Hemsworth is one thing, but to do it with Tom Hiddleston is a whole nother level. So when she's going toe to toe with dialogue with Tom Hiddleston, I think that personally that's pretty underrated. And the flashback scene we get when Loki kind of manipulates her mind to see that's just a beautiful cinematography of like the Valkyries flying in. Like that's incredible. So them are underrated. I mean, I know they're not underrated in a way, but they're just the secondary characters that I think were great.
you got to admit, and they're going to change this obviously, but in previous films, it's like, okay, so how should we approach Lady Sif? We'll make her the rival to Jane Foster for Thor's affections. How are we going to portray Jane? She's totally in love with Thor. Like one thing, like putting, feminism aside, I just love the fact they're just making these characters cool in their own right. And I think we're going to see that in Thor Love and Thunder, where Jane's going to be this OP Thor, and hopefully Sif is going to be this really cool warrior. And I don't know, it's like, unless the love story's there, what's the point of pushing it? That's my opinion on it.
I mean,
Jane-
even-
I just love that this is a podcast of 5 fully grown men talking about feminism.
yeah.
We've gone
Because
through.
we have the authority to be talking about
Yeah,
this.
we've gone through sex change, fat shaming over here, Mark.
We're only qualified to talk
progressive
about race because we're multicultural.
David
We're
brought up
progressive.
Nazis.
Anything
podcast.
left? Casual discussions with the LGBT.
Oh, God. All right, Zeta, there's another clip for you.
It's definitely going in the trailer. But yeah, even she herself, like her response to Thor when he's saying all that, she just kind of like sighs and like just tells him, just get on with it. Like, you don't have to do this. But yeah, I also really like the bit where she has a fight scene with Loki and Loki looks into her memories, which I didn't know was a thing he could do. That was pretty cool. And I do like that there's a there's a history between her and Hela, and I think what they did was enough for it to have an impact. I mean, sure, they could have drawn more on that, but I still feel like the impact was there. But when they face off at the end, there wasn't much to it because it ended up being Ragnarok. But yeah, it was still done well.
She had a cool entrance scene with the fireworks going off from the spaceship, and she's walking in her armor. Like,
But she had
Yeah.
like 3 of those slow-mo walking scenes,
Mardi Gras entrances.
which they were.
I feel like
Honestly-
they could have spanned this over 2 movies, I reckon, with the amount of things they could have spun off, like storyline.
Also, shout out to the ad-lib in this. Like the scene when Thor's telling the story about the snake, and you just see Banner and Valkyrie's reaction. I actually believe that was the actors reacting to that story. Like when he says about Thor, about Loki who turned into a snake, and then it was the most ridiculous story. But just seeing their reactions was so good.
It also shows us that like he's been trying to kill Thor since they were kids. Like it's nothing new to Thor. It started with snakes, now it's with Earth invasions.
But Thor's
Just casual.
surprised every time.
But not in
Yeah.
this
It never
film.
changes.
That's a good scene, David. God.
We'll head into the last few, and I guess we can put them together. So this last one is "Feel the righteousness surging." It's a quote from the Dark World where Loki's copying Cap, like he pretends to be him, and I chose that because Cap always says profound things. He always has lines that are memorable. He's really good at pep talks. So I guess essentially think of a quote or a bit of dialogue in this movie that gave you feels, I guess, or stood out, even if it's just something funny. And then I guess at the end of that, just give your Tobey Maguire rating.
All
right. So David, you want to go first?
Honestly, the part it's a bit cliche, but I like it when Thor's like to Odin, when he's like, "I'm not as strong as you," and Odin says, "No, you're stronger." Just
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just Anthony Hopkins is just a great actor, and they just really know how to capture that moment of, even though Odin has passed on to a new life and he's in a new realm, he still has a way of showing love to his son. He still shows that same care that he's shown for the 3 movies, which is, you are meant for greater things. But even though he's put his son down at different times and, tried to tell him he's not worthy, I feel like he defines what Odin's been trying to say in these 3 films, which is, you're always meant to be more. And now I'm at a point in my life where I don't need to berate you. I don't need to condemn you. I can just share this in a gentle, fatherly way. And that inspires Thor to move forward with his life. So I'll say that. And my Tobey Maguire rating is 9 out of 9 Tobey Maguires out of 10.
Yeah, nice. All right, Grant.
I'm going to go with the Asgard is not a place, it is a people. That's a great quote, obviously. But just a little, what do you call it? A worthy little addition. I like when Eindel says to Loki, "I saw you coming." Loki's like, "Of course you did." It just shows a bit of funny history between them. Like that's just a little worthy inclusion there. But the main quote would be that one from Odin, just because it's that's really when you go like you sort of go deeper into the whole idea of Thor's story and Odin's story, and as Thor as a character, you don't really see much of Asgard. Even in his movies, he's always somewhere else. Like, so it is really about Thor and the people, and yeah, that's my quote. Tobey Maguire's giving it 10. Tobey Maguire's out of 10. 100% success.
Yeah, nice. Josh?
Yeah, bro. Everyone gave such emotional ones. My one was literally going to be piss off, Ghost. But no, in all seriousness, I reckon I actually might choose that little piece of dialogue, that little bit of dialogue where Korg sort of introduced himself and how he got into the whole prison with Thor. I think it was just again, it was sort of our introduction to Korg. I really enjoyed it. And the fact that it felt very close to home. Even with the humor, it's like, oh, the only one that rocked up was my mum and her boyfriend, and I hate him. It just felt like really, I don't know, down to earth and really close. So I really enjoyed that part of the movie. Although there are so many great emotional one-liners and stuff, I just thought I'd veer off a little bit. And I am going to give this movie 9 Tobey Maguires out of 10.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Triple nice. So much nice. Malika, you got yours?
Look, I jokingly gave Odin as my MVP, but the conversations that he has with Thor and with Loki, like when Loki's there, it's like it's a pretty good, like, just the whole dialogue is good. Like, even though it is just Odin going, yeah, hey guys, I caused this problem, fix it. I'm out. But like the three of them, you see the acting spectrum of the three. Tom Hiddleston,
I love you, my son.
Hemsworth, and Odin. I can't remember his name. But like, you can, like, they play the emotions and things on their face are done quite well
Remember this, please.
in that scene, and so for me that stands out. And like it sort of is like one of the growth scenes, even though Thor just gets like destroyed right afterwards.
Just can I just add to that quickly? I think what you're saying, Malik's, about their facial expressions and stuff, like, I feel like Tom Hiddleston did a really good job in that scene, because, like, if you think about it, he's the one that, like, got rid of Odin and put him into that nursing home, and then essentially, like, he's the one that put him in Norway. But when they all reconnect, like, there's no animosity or anything there.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all about reconnecting with his sons, and then
Yeah. And Odin's like, I love you, my sons. And it cuts straight to Loki's face right after
Yeah.
that.
Like, you'd think Loki
good.
would be cheering. Like, finally, what I've been trying to do for 1,000 years is finally happening, and I don't even have to lift a finger to do it. But like, it's the complete opposite. So yeah, that's probably for me.
He finally got that acceptance that he wanted as well.
Yeah, right at the end.
Like what he really wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like, I can't really pick a line, but that would be the quotes, that whole sort of scene. And yeah, I'd give it 9 Tobys out of 10 Maguires.
just the whole Maguire family.
Yeah, cool. Just really quickly, there's one quote in this movie to me that is the defining quote. This is my personal opinion of the movie. What makes it, what drives the character forward, what drives Thor's perception going forward into Infinity War Endgame, what he's like in Endgame, what we see in Endgame, and then what I think will come forward, I hope, with Thor Love and Thunder. And that's, I did really, even though I made some negatives about Odin, I did really enjoy his scenes with his two sons in Norway. And obviously the line where he's like, Asgard's not a place, it's a people, and its people need your help. Like, that to me is so, that drives Thor going forward, where he's able to make the call of a leader to go, we don't need Asgard. It's not a, you know, Asgard isn't this place, it's the people. So let's get them on a ship. Let's bring Ragnarok. Let's get out of here. And then obviously we see that come forward in Norway when they're in where his dad last saw them. They're in there with, you know, in Endgame, with not him leading them, him up there drinking beer, depressed, all this sort of stuff. And so it's a driving narrative where I think it's going to come back into play, I hope, later. I know we're getting almost like as Guardians of the Galaxy in a way where he's left them at this point to go with the Guardians. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Will there be a calling back for him to come back and be that person for Asgard? I don't know, but that's my quote on that. And then my Tobey Maguire rating, really quickly, is, look, I think this movie being in my top 3 sits around that 9 out of 10 range. And then just because it's the third Thor movie, I'm going to give it 9.3 Tobey Maguires out of 10 Tobey Maguires. It's pretty high. There's a reason. I think, you know, it has to be up there for what it is. The more I watch this movie, the higher rating it gets, which I think speaks volumes to the movie. So every time I watch it, I see new things. I find new lines funny. I like different characters. I think it's at some point in my MCU watching, it could even potentially take over that number 2 spot, which is Iron Man 1. So they're kind of like interchangeable at this point. But it could flip, because I still do love the original Iron Man. I think it speaks so much to what MCU is about. So
That's fair.
Mm.
Can I, not to correct, but like, actually Odin, because Thor kind of paraphrases exactly what Odin says, and I like the way Odin put it as well, where he's like, Asgard is where its people stand, is what I think he actually says, right?
Mm.
When Thor,
Think so,
and
yeah.
Thor like kind of changes it, which is, it still means the same thing, but I thought that was like, the way Odin puts it is like, it's pretty good message as well.
I feel like with Thor's, because like, okay, so give example of the Vikings TV show. The whole focus of that show is the idea of the Vikings of old, that they're moving away from their religion, their traditions, and so on, and having to step into a new world, which at the time was Christianity. I think this is a similar sort of thing where, yeah, Odin, Thor, they're all part of an old religion. They're the old gods. And now it's like Ragnarok's like, okay, this is the end of that story. This is the end of that era. So what comes next? So even though we've been thinking this whole time, I thought the arc was it ends with Thor becoming king. Really what the arc is, what is Thor when he's no longer a god? What is Thor when the myths stop, which is what I brought up in the last one. So I think that's what interests me in Love and Thunder. When you see him dressed as like an 80s, action hero, it's like, who's Thor going to be now? Like, it can really go anywhere at this point. So yeah.
Another deep
I agree.
That's the end of the deep cut. All right.
I've just been promoting Deep Dives with Dave this whole time. Plugging.
All right. So yeah, I don't know if I could get this whole quote down. I had to Google it, but it's the bit between Thor and Loki in the elevator right before they do get help, which is great as well. And Thor's like, I thought the world of you, but then he's like, but you're you and I'm me, that kind of thing. I think that's just a good showing of the development of Thor and I guess
Loki, I thought
the characters in this movie, mainly Thor and Loki, where they've kind of accepted the reality of who they've become, how much they've grown, essentially. And I like that because it just carries out throughout the film. Like Thor, David talks about this all the time, that he likes that Thor has kind of just let go of that linear path and realized that there's more to life, is essentially. So I like that this dialogue here, Thor's realizing, even though he thought things could be a certain way or wants things to be a certain way, he has to be realistic with how the situation is. And actually that carries on in Endgame because they can't really change things. That 5 years between after the blip, it's done and gone. And then even at the end of Endgame, Iron Man's gone. You can't go back on these things. You just have to move on. It's a very Captain America thing, really. But yeah, and yeah, Thor says, let's be honest, our paths diverged a long time ago. Just that comment on paths diverging. It's just how it is with this film. And really comment on the film itself. It's just not at all what I expected heading into Thor Ragnarok. As for my rating, I've had time to reevaluate all of mine. So I will give this a 9.48 out of 10, just because I gave Iron Man 1 9.5 and Winter Soldier 9.49.
I feel like 9.48 rounds up to 9.5.
Yeah, so
Unediting 0.48 of a Tobey Maguire.
yeah, should be right. Well, there you have it. Thanks for joining me, boys. Thanks for watching or listening. I don't know what medium you're on. Follow our socials.
Patreon, OnlyFans.
Yep, Malika's OnlyFans.
Malika's premium Snapchat will be in the bio as well.
The other side
$20 a month gets you premium photo sets.
The other side of Hulk that you were wondering about in Ragnarok, it's on his OnlyFans if you want to see it. Exclusive.
I was actually reading this thing and it was like, imagine going to uni for 4 years only to have having your Hulk career to be the dude that did CGI Hulk's butt.
Well, there you go. Malika's got the CGI of the other side. Yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, next is Black Panther, which is going to be huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pumped
Whoa.
for that one.
We'll see how we go through that one. We may do One Division react. It's pretty hard. It's a whole season of episodes.
Oh, I need to go watch that. I've
That
got it
shows-
loading in the background.
Show has been something else. But yeah, so hyped for this MCU train so far. Glad it's back, even because especially 2020 was the first year since 2009 that there hasn't been anything MCU, which is a bit of a
so-
bummer. But we're back on the train, and it was nice to kick it off with Thor Ragnarok. Anyways, catch you all next time. Catch you boys next time.
So,
Thanks for watching.
True.